This is episode 1 of the Renaissance Sermon series. I'm going to attempt to release an episode every week, but I'm still kind of new at this. And starting off, I want everyone to bow their heads. Alright, now I want you to think about your god, deity, or a demon, whatever you may be into. At the same time, I want you to reach for your wallet, and I want you to think about how much money is this entity worth to you. Now, I don't want you to consider things like food, rent, gas, or whatever kind of expenses you may have during this exercise, but I want you to go to the Ko-fi donation link in the description, and I want you to give money as if you're directly giving funds to this entity as an offering. If you can't, for some reason, find your credit card, I will accept a like on this video. This time, at least. I feel like I'm going to bounce back and forth in terms of the seriousness is going to be kind of a wave, so ride it with me. In terms of this series, I want you guys to realize that this is really a result of me deciding to integrate my understanding of the unknown with just the 3D life in general, right? And I decided to really integrate this for a few reasons, and one is I can talk much more freely, right? So I see this world through the lens of astrology and what we know today as mysticism. And that right there is uninhibiting to have this particular outlet for that, I would say. Also, number 2 would be I would like to promote the crossover between really the spiritual community and other communities. And I believe that there is real benefit from this crossover. And I really would like to incentivize more of this to happen. And number 3, I would say I have been keeping until now separate channels, and I believe that this strategy is really turned into more of a statement that says that listeners can exist in two worlds like I can, and that's unacceptable in terms of where we're going, I feel like. And number 4, and the final one, is when it comes down to this concept of a renaissance, I think it's really best understood because the entire Renaissance led to really the spread of something called humanism, right? And there's a lot behind it. Look it up if you can. But I want to promote, for this particular Renaissance, the spread of a concept called energeticism, right? And humanism was a concept, like I said, look it up, but it led Da Vinci to mapping the human body and developing a biological understanding of this suit that we wear, right? And I want to see concepts that are really developed from the relationship that exists between the world of the unseen and 3D reality, right? And I firmly believe that we will see innovative solutions and really breakthrough discoveries from this particular lens in general. So our first report is going to be on the astrological weather, right? And when it comes down to astrologers, I want you guys to please understand something. One, we're not all sun sign chicks like your ex or your friends maybe, right? The idea here is that there are tons of interpretations that come along with really astrology and specifically any of the changes that you see, but I'm going to really take a brief moment to give just mention to what's happening, what's taking place, so maybe you guys can search for this and search for maybe some kind of interpretation. And I'd really recommend that you look for astrologers that you really like for interpretations and treat it particularly like an art and a science, right? Because the idea is to find someone who really resonates with you and seems to provide valuable insight to your situation. Understand that we're all, in terms of astrologers, we're all filters for the astrology or the birth chart in general, and I want you guys to treat it like really you need to find the right ones for where you are right now, and you can find multiple, right? And my only complaint about particularly like astrology on, I guess, YouTube in general is the idea that it's just restrictive by its very nature, right? You're not going to see a video about your unique chart, right? That's not going to be out there unless you're like, who is it? Tom Hardy or somebody, I don't know. But the idea here is you're gonna find this stuff and it's going to resonate depending on, a number of factors, but including the fact that you have a unique chart that is really takes precedence over your particular situation and conscious experience in this lifetime. Now, in terms of my style and rulership scheme, it's going to be different in some cases. There are going to be there's going to be a lot of alignments in terms of, constants throughout like a lot of the astrology community, but there are going to be differences. And the idea here is that I am the filter for this particular, for these things. And I want you guys to understand that, because I'm not going to just give you guys disclaimers every time I start talking astrology. It's really just a headache, and I'm not going to do it. But the idea here is you will find it, you will find it, and you will understand it. But also take into account that when you start looking through different people, they will filter astrology, but through their own unique way, right? The idea here is, I do have kind of a thing with astrologers that jump to definite conclusions just too fast for my liking, or they haven't done enough research or investigations before they actually predict really the meaning of a chart, or where this thing can go. But that just means they aren't for me, right? They're not for my particular purpose, right? And if you still have money left over from giving me donations in the beginning, you can let me know if you want to pay for a reading, but you can get a pretty solid understanding if you find a good teacher on YouTube, right? And in terms of right now, I think it's really, really important to say that we're in crazy weather, right? We're zoomed like this. What I'm going to give you guys is just, I got like 4 points I'm going to give you guys, but it's really just zoomed into right now. If you zoom out, there is absolute, I won't say, I don't want to say chaos, but there's a lot going on right now, and you can totally check that out, and I'd really incentivize you to check that out. And in terms of this particular video, the 4 things that I'm noting here is 1, Jupiter entered into Cancer, right? Number 2 is Mercury also entered into Cancer, on pretty close to Jupiter, and also Venus moved into Taurus. And by the time you're watching this, Mars and Uranus, excuse me, will have formed a square right during the dictator parade, right, that we're really expecting to see tomorrow. And that's going to be interesting, because there may be more to come of that, depending on how that actually takes place, which, it's probably going to be something on it. Now, we're going to talk about a few a few reports, various reports on, really what's going on. And at the end of the report, I'm going to try to give them an interpretation in terms of how I see things. But the first report, I think, is really a nice starter, right? Because it really revolves around kind of it's kind of a small hiccup, I would say, right? Because this kind of reminds me of how, how when you're like, you balled up a piece of paper and you throw it intending to go into the trash can, but it misses, right? In this case, the Prime Minister of Czech, they did something kind of like that, right? And this is a report by Zuzana Vlasada. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. But I think the biggest difference between me or you missing the trash can and the Prime Minister is really that between 80,000 and 100,000 fish were estimated to have died when they missed the trash can. Now, that may sound a bit extreme, but I want you guys to work with this, right? And also see if this sounds familiar. Because the Prime Minister was really a business leader who really got elected after the people got fed up with the billionaires and corruption, right? And this guy, he owned some factories, and he had particularly like a political party that claimed that they would be really the business-centered solution to corruption, right? And for anyone out there thinking that maybe like corruption is a pretty business-centered problem, shut up. These guys got in and they fired a lot of environmental regulators that were, just people who were just going to spread misinformation and really just rain on their parade. But when the fish started dying and this company was blamed, the reps, they actually went to court and they blamed a factory that was downstream from where the fish started dying. Now, if you guys are asking, Sleepy, how did the fish manage to swim upstream? I want to take this time to explain something to you. You're a meat bag listening to another meat bag, and these episodes are going to be really hard if you can't just suck it up and be humble for once. These are professional, esteemed lawyers and judges that preside over this case. The judge, the honorable judge, cleared the company from any legal mischief. And the Prime Minister got released from a fine and a 5-year jail sentence, right? Now, they call this guy the Czech Trump. And before you guys ask, I don't know if he has a meme coin. And when it comes down to the actual investigation process, the investigators, they were looking to see if employees' phones matched the whistleblowers' phones that gave the tip that the company was actually the source of polluting this river, right? And if you guys are like, yo, Sleepy, why would they go through the phones? I want to remind you again. Be humble, meatbag. I'm sure that they just wanted to thank the guys personally, okay? And when asked about corruption in Czech, some fake news anti-corruption watchdog rep said that you only need a few leaders, right? The rest of the people are so focused on their immediate task that they don't consider the overarching purpose behind what they are doing. The staff could be biased in their duties without necessarily thinking of themselves as compromised, he said, right? They might do their jobs honorably enough, but they would always respect the fact that some players were untouchable and too big to confront. Interesting fake news insight, but when it comes down to the zodiac sign, right, I think really we should understand really Scorpio for this particular situation, right, because Scorpio rules over a spectrum of things. But for this particular report, you should understand that Scorpio rules over power, greed, manipulation, and it also rules over rivers, which is kind of a sidebar, but it rules over rivers as well, right? And when politicians, they fall into Scorpio's negative spectrum, it's a dark place, right? It can be detrimental for really the rest of the population, right? And it can be very dangerous for the rest of the population. And like I said, we'll talk more about Scorpio. But anyway, my heart goes out to I pray for Shazak. Apparently, the prime minister got like dethroned after he was found to be a corrupt dirtbag. But this, the second rising of Trump apparently is giving him hope to run again. The next story is really about a fake news source, right? It's called 972 magazine, right? And that's 972 is really the area code for Israel, right? And this magazine is independently reporting on what's going on in Israel and Gaza. Now, I'm going to do a larger segment on this incident in general, but if you're looking for something, I would say that it is a fake news start, right? And this idea is this interview with the editor-in-chief was, I mean, it was short but insightful, and I think it's really important to note this. I'm gonna, like I said, it's gonna be a wave in terms of how I deal with some stuff, because I think it is really important. He noted two things, right? And this is, one was how the rescue teams were severely impacted by the inability to save someone, right? It's interesting, you know. I wanted to at some point go into healthcare at a point, so that was kind of like just a hiccup for me in general. But the two is how the Israeli media, they hyper focus on this October 7th attack, and if you look around today, you're getting fed quite a few things, right? And I want you guys to understand that despite really the redefinitions going on, Jewish people should never be conflated with Israeli people or the government. Is very likely the Jewish people's greatest threat, right? And I'm going to really look into more about how intertwined, particularly the Israeli Mossad and the CIA are, right? Because if you don't know, there's this a CIA spy who was even, I mean, controversial with the CIA, was called James Angleton, and he is known as really the founding father between the CIA and the Mossad alliance, right? And he even has like a monument or some kind of I don't think it's an actual statue, but it's some kind of emblem of respect in Israel. For those that don't know, Mossad is just the Israeli CIA, basically. And for those wondering why we're getting mixed stories about the situation, shut up. No, I'm playing. I think this relationship can really be explained by a concept, and this concept is interesting because Netanyahu, who is really the prime minister that a lot of you may have heard about, he gets a lot of heat, but Israel really works hard to develop a culture of unquestioning support from powerful people and other Jews in general, right? They even offer like young adult Jewish people free trips to Israel, right? And I'm not too sure, but it feels like, I think it really reminds me about how the Koch brothers set up an atmosphere to really capture the right and gain more of an intellectual defense for oil and gas companies and climate change denial, right? And this is interesting because among other things, like, Koch set up this like retreat for judges and law professionals to get them to simply just be more sympathetic to companies that were literally like destroying nature for profit, and or literally poisoning people for profit. It's crazy, but and it's crazy, but it was effective, right? And also, I'm not going to link this and get shadow banned, but if you're into fake news reporting misinformation about the Israel lobbying group, AIPAC, I want you guys to check out the U.S. lobby video by it's published on the YouTube channel Electronic Intifada, right? And Al Jazeera did the reporting and their name's on it, but they banned it after a lot of pressure. Don't know who could have done that, right? It's crazy. But that idea of this particular video will give you insight into what's happening, what's going on, why is there such a tremendous pressure. And for Christ's sake, don't search it right after this, whatever, just watch a few cat videos or listen to like Joe Rogan before you go looking, so the algorithm doesn't link me to your particular escapades. Unfortunately, this situation can also really be explained by the concept of Scorpio, right? And the Middle East is really, I give the Middle East rulership of Scorpio, and that idea is, well, I would say there's a lot of reasons behind this, but really, when it comes down to this particular conflict, you should know that Scorpio rules over hate, control, killing, death, vengeance, and sidebar, it also rules over deserts and tunnels. In terms of U.S. news, a lot of you guys would probably say that I'm more left-leaning, right? And I don't really believe that we're going to get a political revolution from either party, right? So but the idea here is, if you are really still MAGA, the idea is you're either severely lacking really awareness of what's happening right now, or you're just severely disillusioned if you still believe that this party is going to help common everyday people, right? And if you are thinking, well, Sleepy, you shouldn't be political because it alienates, shut up. I'm just playing. But when it comes down to politics, I'm rarely big P political, right? But this right here, what's taking place, this is really small p political, right? Because I'm never really known for going out of my way to use every name in the book to smear people in any particular political party. But if you think that this is something that you can avoid in terms of what's taking place, and it won't harm you in any way, it's really because you honestly believe that you can't be touched by this. And if you're trying to really share, if you're a content creator that's a MAGA influencer of some kind, the chances are is you're trying to hold on to a really disillusioned audience, right? And some of you are saying, like, but Sleepy, and I know that I may have a substantial following, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and put all that on the line here, right? Because I can't pretend that this is normal, right? I'm an astrologer, and I'm black, right? And that idea is, I don't really know if Trump is actually racist, but what he does, there's enough dog whistling and head nods to the white supremacists and the Nazis for it not to even matter at this point, right? I think he'll give his base whatever distracts them from his cartoonish level of corruption or the chances of him actually being on the Epstein list, right? And I'll be honest with you. I'm seeing just white Republicans in line for the voting polls, and a lot of these guys, they're just whistling while the person like in front of them is like wearing an all white sheet and burning a cross. Like that's in terms of this idea. In terms of the guys, the actual people in line, they may not be racist either. But I'm surely not going to depend on these folks to say something if I'm targeted, right? This is, I mean, I think you guys should understand this idea of me having to do with anything political and what's taking place. It's, I would say a lot of y'all may say it is truth telling, but it's also really self-preservation to an extent. There's a interesting, really event, I would say, in this particular book about really the CIA and what happened with Alan Dulles or something. But they go over at some point what happened in really Germany, and apparently the Americans were hiding some of the Nazis, and the idea was, or the main generals in the army, and the idea was that there was a lot of financial incentive to do these things, right? Alan Dulles was actually a finance guy, for those who don't know. In terms of actually, before he went into the CIA, that's what helped him make a lot of the connections that really helped him during his career. But in terms of when the U.S. was hiding these people, these generals, right? They were of prestigious, rank in the army of some kind, right? At some point, a military officer who just was not with this, like, he wasn't with it at all. He was not with the idea of hiding them. He wanted them just straight up executed. But the idea was, he went there and he walked up to the guy's front door, and there was no ceremony, there was no level of respect or anything like that. He actually, when he walked up to the door, he actually spit on the floor, like he was just like, hey, let me just get this done with, and a lot of these guys, they need to understand who they, like, the level of respect that, I don't care what the government has given you in terms of the prestige that the government has given you, or whatever political party has given you. I think you need to understand who you are to me at that point, and that's really, I think that's important for us to really understand, especially today, because some people have really an understanding of themselves that's completely out of base with reality. Thing that's really up in the news, or was up in the news, things move so fast nowadays, is the fact of the LA riots, right? And Legal Eagle has like a YouTube channel that covers really the situation quite well, and there's also a number of other YouTube videos out there, and we are placing soldiers on the ground who are supposedly repressing an insurrection started by people protesting the ICE guys who were like wearing masks, and I don't. And this is crazy in terms of coverage. I mean, I think a lot of you may be thinking that creators and outlets are really just trying to give red meat to the MAGA crowd, and if you think that, I'm going to remind you again. I want you to understand. You need to be humble, you meatbag. Protesting mandatory COVID vaccines was acceptable, but it's clear that that couple selling flowers and the other one making delicious tacos, they are actually terrorists. And RFK, he's going to find out if those tacos have anti-Semitism causing chemicals in them. In any case, Elon and Jeff Bezos, they're actually really excited about the idea, the chances increasing of them giving their employees more money, right? Because the only thing that's been stopping them are the immigrants. Not the ones who came over on the H-1B visas, but the other ones. Now, for those that don't know, the birth chart for the U.S. is called the Sibley chart, right? And the U.S. is actually what is called a Sagittarius rising, okay? And we'll talk all about Sagittarius in general, but for this particular report, you should know that it rules over foreigners, right? And of course, we are a country of foreigners. And our relationship with foreigners is, it can be easily seen as something that deeply affects us as a nation. This next, I'll see segment, because I'm not going to really include any links here. I think you guys can find it quite easily. Trump and involving with the Epstein list, I think. Elon had a tweet that basically accused Trump of being on the list and said that that was the reason that the files weren't released, right? And but Kash Patel, he went on Joe Rogan, and happenstance that came up, and Kash Patel just put everyone at ease, right? And I think if you think that Kash Patel would lie to us, that's just hurtful. There are several fake news channels that seem to think that contradicting statements that were made by him or his boss actually proved that he's lying. I mean, I just don't know what to say. I'm speechless. I'm just truly speechless. And I've seen some comments on really the MAGA online channels, I would say, that call out Kash as if he's in bed with Mossad behind Trump's back. And if you were thinking that Trump would be the one to actually order Kash to lie, you're a conspiracy theorist. Get some help. In regard to these particular allegations, I think the fake news secular talk on YouTube has a video where Kyle Kalinske shows really what he thinks is evidence of why Trump is very likely on the list. And it's like I said, it's fake news. It's all lies, but check him out if you happen to be into fake news and misinformation. When it comes down to this, I think this is important enough to really set aside the any type of atmosphere of playfulness about what's happening in the atmosphere today, because when it comes down to really the Democrats, I want to make something very clear. I've seen at least one left-wing independent media voice saying that they believe, making fun of Kash, but at the same time saying that they actually believe that Epstein killed himself, right? The idea was Kash was, had this particular, he got there in terms of his position by lying to the audience or lying to everyone about what happened. And this guy, he got up and he said, he just flat out said it, that he didn't believe that, or he did believe that Epstein killed himself. And there's a few things. One, it's not a logical assumption for a well-informed person to make. Okay? This is a tremendous factor of really why there is no political revolution in the two-party system, I think, right? Two, I want you guys to really be aware that the overall Democratic response to Trump is really to sit back and wait, like they're the less functional or the less dysfunctional adult parent, and we are the poor children with only two choices, right? These guys, I'm very serious. They are platforming a literal billionaire and a literal CIA agent like they are fighters for the Democratic Party, right? And it may be, like, in terms of, the billionaire, it may be a bit much to say that all billionaires are evil. But at the very least, they should not try to platform themselves as representatives for normal people. I.e., be quiet, stay out of politics. In terms of the CIA agent, I think that right there, that idea is, I'm still in shock. That is something that's literally something that they brought to the forefront. Like, somebody said, "Oh, just go ahead and explain that you were in the CIA." Like, it's crazy. I don't like. I'm not sure if you guys understand really the idea and the idea of working for the CIA, but I want you guys to, this is it, in terms of the understanding, I'm trying to imagine myself at a party and someone says that they work for the CIA or they worked for the CIA. One, there is no past tense worked. I don't think that exists. I'm very hesitant to believe anything that is past tense in terms of working for the CIA, unless you were kicked out and on some Edward Snowden in Russia. That's how you worked for the CIA. That's how you openly state that you worked for the CIA. But the idea of in any case, these guys at a party coming out and saying that, I'm just really I'm imagining I would probably remember the MK Ultra experiments, and I would just immediately stop consuming anything at the party, and I would assume that the place is bugged, right? That this is unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. No way that this even came out. I'm just expecting somebody be like, "Oh, we were just joking. We just wanted to, I don't know what kind of explanation you have for that. That's crazy to me to think that would be a thing that you believe could be said in public. But in terms of this overall response, I want you to understand, they're not trying to provide any type of equal and opposite solutions to how to solve really today's problems. These guys, a lot of them are simply looking for how corrupt the response can be. That's their job. They are literally just running data to figure out, well, things are going sour, what can we do and what can we get away with in our response? And that's how things are really looking right now. I want you guys to understand that. And number three, these indie, quote unquote, indie voices or, independent media, these guys are being paid left and right to shepherd people toward the machine. Okay? There's a comedian, Tim Dillon. He did a show recently where he talked about how he's been invited over to dinners so that some shady people could literally discuss the media with him, right? And in terms of this segment, I think everyone's probably may have, or a lot of people probably have heard that we're in this age of Aquarius, right? And Aquarius rules over a spectrum of things, but right now, I really want people to understand that Aquarius rules over both concepts of revolution and renaissance, right? And the idea here is that people become intelligent, Aquarius, and they decide to act for the good of themselves and future generations, Aquarius. This is going to be up to the people, Aquarius. That's going to be the solution that we need. There won't be any billionaire or CIA leaders that lead you to a better life. That won't exist, right? I firmly state that pretty confidently. But the idea of Aquarius, I think, is important, which also brings us to our next story, is the rulership over machines and artificial intelligence. Palantir is really first up when it comes down to producing a centralized database, right? And it appears like Trump is trying to make up for lost time and get everyone into the book 1984 because I mean he's using the guise of efficiency to do this, and he wants a private company called Palantir to head this particular central database. Very interesting for a few reasons. One, Palantir is not a there is no, Palantir does not care, right? It is firmly embedded in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. If you think that there's going to be some kind of Democratic response that swats down the idea of Palantir having data, it's not going to happen. I don't think we can really expect that, right? And the idea here is that this guy Peter Thiel and Alex Karp they started this organization, right? Peter Thiel is like framed as this like free speech absolutist, whatever, but he's more Republican. He's the guy who's backing JD Vance, which, God, is so crazy to think. But the idea of also Alex Karp is actually, he helps, like, he's more into the Democrats, right? And and thank God that this guy Alex Karp can't stop running his mouth about what he wants Palantir to do, right? Because it genuinely looks like Alex hates people. He is bold on camera and on record for using AI to kill people, right? And I mean, when your toaster decides to take that fight between you and your partner as a threat that to be handled with lethal force, that's going to be the cost of doing business in a first world country, right? It's like these guys, it's hard to believe that they have the power that they have already, but it's an organization, right? So Palantir, there's been a lot of back and forth with them, especially when they were in their starting days between Palantir and the CIA. They had plenty of visits. Peter Thiel and Alex have plenty of visits with the CIA in terms of at their office on record, right? For those that don't know, I think it's important to really understand when CIA needs to do the Big Brother stuff, private industry is and has always been a go-to place to act without that pesky Congress oversight, right? Snowden actually worked for and was trained by the CIA, but officially he was employed by a private business. Okay? This idea of, mixing business and government, believe me when I say this is something that really it gets the CIA riled up in terms of what they can do, right? And in terms of this particular situation, I think what's really crazy, a lot of influencers are falling on the sword for Palantir, right? And I've heard things like, oh, Peter Thiel isn't as big as a deal as we make him out to be, or like this guy Alex Jones, which, I mean, if you guys haven't heard of, he's like the most loud and vocal conspiracy theorist, maybe. I don't know, but he's actually saying on the record that Palantir is the small AI company that's going to help us defeat the deep state. I don't know if you guys really appreciate the time that we're in, right? Because we're able to sit back and watch a lot of these people sell out in real time, right? By no estimation is Peter Thiel understated. By absolutely no measure is Palantir the small AI underdog company, right? They're being used in this whole conflict with Israel and Palestine. This isn't some off the beat path AI company that's gonna come in and do the uproot the deep state. I don't know what, but this guy, he fell on the sword for Palestine, or for Palantir, and that's pretty insane to me. And I think it's crazy in terms of like being able to watch people just completely sell themselves. And if you happen to be recording this particular message, I want you guys to delete it, because if Palantir comes across this video and they pay me enough, I will run ads for how friendly and convenient the centralized database is for the everyday citizen. This idea of where we're at now, Palantir particularly has this program that's really being used to collect the data, right? And they call this program the Foundry. For people who don't know, I've been working on this idea, this particular project that is also called the Foundry, and I've been working on it. I probably had it named well before them on record. We'll see. But the idea here is, I took this particular naming this idea as more of a sign, because I feel like that puts me on the right track. That's really just an indicator that I am on the right track, because I will openly say that my development will, my concept for development, it will not coexist with the Foundry that Palantir has designed. There is no way for the coexistence to take place. And it's important that we understand that a lot of us have hard lines, right? Because the U.S. in particular, I would say, has a tremendous Pisces problem, right? Now, and Pisces rules over a spectrum of things, right? Secrets, surveillance, lies, but also things like poor people, drug addictions, medicine in general, or the pharmaceutical company in general, the pharmaceutical drugs, they would all be ruled by Pisces, right? And the one thing that I think is really plays in opposition to help people understand what the spectrum that exists on the zodiac sign is Pisces also represents spirituality. And this is a huge, I think, just put in the playfulness on the side for a second. I think this is a huge reason why this concept of a sermon is important. Because the temptations and the negative manifestations of Pisces really become a lot less appealing when you have a strong relationship with the world of the unseen. This next report is an excellent video done by a YouTuber recently explaining how Elon Musk is an actual fraud. He's very much fraudulent in so many different ways that we may not understand, right? And you should totally check out the channel. It is named the Foundry News, and it's called Elon Musk and the Renaissance. I'm going to try to section this in terms of different things. And probably the U.S. news, I mean, especially nowadays, is going to be the biggest section, but also this idea of business, community, and culture, right? And in terms of the first segment on this, or the first report on this particular segment, it's the idea of zine fairs in Japan, right? And I'll link the video below. It's like a little over 3 minutes. But there's a very cool, I would say it's a very cool video on how the zine culture is getting more attention in Japan, right? And for those that don't know, the name zines comes from the shortened version of magazines, right? Zines are basically indie publications. And I'm really excited about this for a few reasons. And I suppose one is I actually have done zines before. I actually developed kind of a system for doing zines, and I'll happily share that in terms of how to kind of do this in a very convenient way. But in general, I think in this idea of a renaissance, the understanding that a lot of people should understand, or that should really carry with them, is that it is meant to be a golden age for art and literature. And really, the idea of zines becoming more popular is indicative of the idea of the gatekeeping coming really to a halt, right? Because some publishing companies, they have developed systems to profit without any particular goal to benefit society in any way, shape, or form, right? And when we're looking at a golden age, art, literature, yeah, there's going to be some zines that are not really up to standard, but there's also going to be some really passionate people that you get to see, really unfiltered. And I think that's it's nice to see, and I feel like it's the hint of real that a lot of what we've kind of started platforming is missing out on. And I think another reason why this is so exciting is because the idea of the Foundry. When I say the Foundry, I'm not I am not talking about the Palantir Foundry, but the Foundry in terms of the concept, the concept for a intelligent mixed use development is that this is a place that is really designed to provide real opportunity, particularly for the indie community and dedicated indie professionals, right? In today's environment, this place is really going to be designed to provide basic health care and incentivize really income for a lot of these guys. The idea here is I want to provide a platform a more effective platform, I'll say, and basic healthcare services to indie authors and artists alike, right? And I got this particular idea in terms of how is this practical. I got this particular idea from two places. One was my time working at Home Depot, and another time was where I was working with a nonprofit. And with Home Depot, they offered insurance almost immediately for like basic health care, right? And that showed me that there was kind of a scale that was more accessible than the idea of all in health insurance or all out of health insurance, in terms of what that's introduced to a lot of us. And the idea of the nonprofit, there was the leader of the nonprofit was a med student who was in contact with some healthcare professionals, right? And we in this particular project, we were working on like renovating a building, and he wanted to set up a basic clinic for just immigrants and just poor people in general, right? The idea was there would be no expensive equipment. The nurses would be able to provide a lot of the services, and it was, it was established. This wasn't like a question. And in terms of the actual development or the actual renovating that building, that didn't take place. But he was in contact with the organizations that would help him set this up. That I don't have a doubt in my mind that actual clinic was possible. And in terms of the end goal, I think universal healthcare is the common sense ideal, right? Nobody, like you hear Bernie talk for like 5 minutes, and it's pretty much like, what are we doing giving money to people who like aren't even going to school for healthcare? I don't even understand that. This particular idea of what's happening today, a lot of people, I would say, feel nostalgia, right? Particularly over like the 80s and the 90s. And there's an Instagram that I'll have in the link below. And I would say that, I didn't experience the 80s, but the 90s were a good time, right? And I think this particular page is nice in itself. It's really just something nice to really just incentivize you or just really promote you guys to really visit. But there's also a parallel to the idea and the concept of the Foundry here, because the Foundry is set up to make it possible and more comfortable for people to live without smartphones. And that is it's the idea here is to provide really space and opportunity for people to reestablish the relationship that we have with technology, right? And I want the Foundry to, I feel like this may be me dreaming about what the 90s is or could be or could have been, but I want the Foundry to feel more like that at the very least. And the last article is really from a climate scientist, right? And this particular climate scientist she has apparently a way to subscribe to. You can get her newsletter or whatever, but the idea is she wants to provide and promote the idea of hope in terms of where we're at now, because in terms of like a lot of what I hate about the platform voices from the left is when it comes down to climate, when it comes down to really the idea like of climate change, we are really filled to the brim with ideas that it's too late and that we can't do anything. And I would say that makes really this this particular newsletter worth signing up to. When we think about the Renaissance, I want you guys to understand that humans are so much more powerful than we really know. And I'm really also, like, I would say I'm reminded of it, like, this time I spent, like, traveling, right? And the idea was, I went to this park, and it, I don't want to hear any shit, but I was pretty much eavesdropping on a conversation by this group of bird watchers. And while they were, like, talking, this one of the, like, the girls in the group, she started to get riled up about really solar energy. And it seemed about really the frustration of why we can't just switch to solar energy rather than what we do now. And the group of friends that I assume that she brought with her, or that she came with, what they got quiet. It looked like really her friends knew that she would get riled up about this, and decided that simply giving her the silent treatment until she shut up about it was something that they would do. The idea of wanting to do something and believing that you can, it's not hopium, right? That's hope and opium, right? That idea of just trying to peddle hope. I mean, I still feel bad for not at least trying to, like, say something, and to that particular girl, because that was, I mean, I've had that experience before. I know what that feels like, to be in a group of people that simply want to be okay with how things are and not really want to talk about doing anything. And it's, if any of you guys are in that particular situation, some of y'all might be annoying. Some of y'all, I'll be honest, some of y'all might be annoying. And that's something that you also got to carry with you, that self-awareness. But also try to find an outlet for that energy, because that's not something that should just simply sit and not have a way out, right? I actually started the concept of the Foundry from that frustration, right? And maybe that's what you guys need to do as well. I'll link a Discord and in the description for anybody who's really wants more of a community of people who actually want to take action about something. That's something that is there. Please, I don't know who's out there. I know there was, like, some crazy climate change, like, guys out there at some point, and we're doing some pretty insane stunts. Just act like the Discord, the CIA can see the Discord, or the Palantir can see the Discord. I don't know. But that idea of a community of people that want to do something, I think a lot of people could use that. And, well, I mean, I think a lot of us are really just tired of seeing people give up. I'm going to do the best I can to guide for this particular platform. I want to do the best I can to encourage and guide conversations to solutions, particularly of the legal variety. Jesus Christ, if y'all are, like, not if y'all are crazy, that is not the place. But the idea is, if you want to, talk about things, it's nice. But I mean, if you're really just interested in hearing your own voice, then this isn't going to be the best place. And that right there concludes the reports, right? And I've already finessed you into giving me some donations, so I want to say, to close out, I would like for you guys to really ponder this, right? And what kind of community could survive the fall of society, right? How can you get your community to become more resilient? And I think this particular prompt, I think, was really brought by the idea of Isaac Asimov, right? I think he wrote I, Robot, the movie with Will Smith or whatever, where that book came from. I don't think he had anything to do with the actual movie itself, but he also wrote a book called The Foundation, right? And it's a whole series, I believe, the Foundation series, where some scientists, he predicts the fall of society, and he plants seeds to save humanity from, an, you know, in terms of from a much longer period that would have been spent in the Dark Ages. You can totally just ponder that by yourself or leave some comments. In any case, I'll see you with episode 2 of the Renaissance Sermon. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful week.